Maybe one thing for you then.
The way I carry myself, the way I speak with my hands, you know, the way I scowl when I get angry, all things that I inherited from my father.
Okay.
And so I think surrender, the topic in there is more, unfortunately, and it's not autobiographical in any way. It's more speaking about the apple not falling far from the tree, and I say that in the lyric of how, you know, you basically, the character of the parent in the song has a problem with addiction and never wants this for his child, but a lot of times those things are passed down through the blood, and you know, such as alcoholism and things like that. And so, you know, you end up seeing in your child all of a sudden all these characteristics that you saw in you when you were younger, and maybe it's the same thing for the child except for reverse. Like, I never wanted to be like my dad, and all of a sudden I'm doing all the things my dad did, or you know what I mean. So it's kind of talking about that, you know.
I have to stop within a few minutes, but I still have two questions.
Okay.
Yeah, well, Meanest of Times. What was the Meanest of Times?
The Meanest of Times, because again, the songs are about family and growing up, a lot of them. When you think back to your school days and you look at the album cover, it's a bunch of kids at school. Those were the meanest of times in a lot of ways when you think about it. You know, I mean, whether you grew up well or you grew up not so well, you go through things in school, everybody does, that are some of the meanest of times, whether you're embarrassed in front of the whole class because, you know, somebody, you know, you're a girl and somebody flipped your dress up, or you know, you're outed amongst your friends as having cried at some movie, and you're, you know, being teased or being bullied or being rejected by the popular kids, or not having the cool clothes, or, you know, whatever, you know, some of these things are autobiographical because I definitely didn't have the cool clothes and I definitely wasn't hanging out with the popular kids. So you look back at those times, and some of those were the meanest of times for sure, but everything that you go through in life shapes who you end up becoming. So,
but I think,
you know,
you were saying shapes you, but I think especially in these times, you weren't that shaped, so I think you're more vulnerable.
You're more of a piece of clay, and you're definitely more vulnerable, and it's an innocent time, and the innocence sort of gets stripped away layer by layer, sometimes slowly and sometimes swiftly. So you know, and it isn't until you kind of come out the other side, when you're growing up, you come out the other side and then you realize it, but as you're going through it, you don't really realize it, you know. And I think in a lot of ways, sometimes you don't even realize it until you have children yourself, you know what I mean? You don't realize what you went through and what your parents went through to raise you. You don't really even appreciate it until you're doing it yourself, and you go, Jesus, how the hell did my parents do it? You know, I mean, I come home from tour, and my wife has been taking care of my son the whole time. She'll go off for a day, and I'm with my son, and by the time she comes home, I'm like, take him. Yeah. Jesus Christ, how the hell do you do it when I'm gone by yourself? You know what I mean? It's like, so you get a real appreciation for, you know, and the way the cost of living these days, and, you know, how the hell did my mother and my father support not one but two children and raise us, and we weren't, you know, we weren't growing up, we didn't grow up with a lot of, you know, like, of the niceties in life. We weren't spoiled, but we didn't go without either, you know what I mean? There was always food on the table, we were always clothed, and, you know, I mean, I don't remember ever being, you know, feeling like we were poor, but there were definitely times now when I talk to my father when, you know, he says, yeah, we weren't doing too well at that point in time, you know.